A lot of people took pay cuts, a lot of people with lots of jobs, but we do applaud the administration for their efforts in keeping the costs in them.
All right, I will pose the next question to ZTRE. If the 2011 budget balances, including the stimulus funds alone, I'm sorry, that's more of a schools question. But we'll pose it to you, and then the schools will get to ask it as well. But if the 2011 budget balances, including the stimulus funds alone, why are you announcing teachers will lose their jobs? Fair enough.
In April this year, because there's a statutory window during which the board can determine whether or not it's going to retain the contracts on the teachers that will flow into 2012, because here in early 2011, I have a very brief window during which to provide that notice about the contractual rights of our teachers. And so without the referendum funding, I will have to indicate they should not assume the spending that will occur in the back half of those contracts. And so when the students come back to school in August, they will see fewer teachers. And we will also see more students. We've been adding about 100 students per year in recent years, even during the recession. So that is why program and staffing cuts, given that we've cut so much from other areas, and we're now at the precipice where we must cut each program to ensure that our board's obligations can be met if there is non-passage of the referendum.
The other quick point is that we're maybe a little over $1 million. We've been advised, having been a superintendent, public superintendents of schools, is advised school districts at this point not to count that as necessarily spendable, because the financial statement of the state doesn't increase. Much like half dozen other states have already announced, they'll just offset the state funding against the federal funding, so you really won't have any net. That isn't going to wind up being net surplus, and you won't know that until sometime in the fall, well past that April date, we have to make our decision.
In our review of what Mike has prepared in the budget, you mentioned earlier we had some fantastic or very optimistic economic projections, and we don't. We're relying on Mike's numbers. It's the most probable outcome that he said. There's funding cuts built into it, not funding increases. Even with that, there's enough money in the budget to pay for every teacher in every program next year. If that turns out not to be the case, in terms of further cuts below that budget, then we look at it at that time. But this time we see absolutely no reason for any cuts. Again, as Jeff went out, plus the cash balances that are on hand. It gives us enough buffer of time, if it does get worse, to react next year.
All right, I will give you this next question. ZTRE, why have you taken the time to look into this? Are you willing to continue to help the schools find better solutions to the problems that they face?
Actually, we had a nice conversation with Ms. Ritchie about that, and I think that's something that's probably got to start happening. Again, we don't want to be up there. This would have been much better to have resolved both whether a referendum is necessary, the number of years it's necessary for, because it doesn't have to be for 7, it can be for less, and the amount. And it would have been nice if there was some way we could all work together so we're not up here countering each other's arguments. It's just I know we've cost them a lot of time, and they've cost us a lot of time. Would we do this in the future? Yeah, we've already talked about it again when this issue came up. Ron and I would certainly consider that, but I'm not so sure that it wouldn't be good money well spent, assuming we don't go way past the worst case scenario next year. Actually, maybe hire a third party to do it. Actually, I think all government agencies should hire companies like Rob's to look at all their books and get them working, because from what I know about them, the night, and the way they report is just a horrific mess, and it's hard to track it and make good decisions.
Such private companies often refer questions to people I know in business management because it is so complex. It's a nightmare, as a matter of fact, you indicated earlier. The cost cut committee began work over a year ago and had over 57 public meetings. These folks voted with respect and indicated that they got interested this summer. We've been in this hunt for a long time. We have nuanced knowledge of this that spans many years in terms of, again, interaction funds and the projections that really are the expertise of my committee. For instance, the misconception and continued misimpressions that are given about cash balance. In fact, it's like, because of our reporting in the state, when we get a payday twice a year, Form 9 flops open your checkbook on the day when you just received pay. And I don't know what it looks like at your house, but the day I paid, before I paid my bills, my checking account was really good. So some of these misimpressions that rely on deep understanding of what we have done here to ensure that our board isn't obligated for spending, but being responsible and coming to you and giving you the opportunity to avoid the sorts of cuts I've got to recommend with a legislature probably in session, with prohibition against spending the money that we think might come through the stimulus and will probably be taken from another pocket in the budgeting process, as has been recommended will happen in several other states, probably will in Indiana. In fact, I believe they've done that 3 times with stimulus money already. And so I also want to close by saying that Mr. Schaefer did not indicate pages 215 and 216, one of many computer models, was the most likely or probable scenario. That just did not happen.
Thank you, Doctor. Schools, get the next question here. Pretty clear here. Why haven't we heard more about the stimulus money?
Well, if I may, we discussed it a number of times. Stimulus money is very uncertain at this time. We have a track record in Indiana of seeing money that is sent to us from the federal government, offset against money the state will otherwise pay us, so that we actually get no benefit from it. That's happened 3 times in the last couple of years. There are at least 6 other states where they have already said that that's exactly what's going to happen with the teacher stimulus money. So at this point, our confidence in seeing it done is quite, let's talk quite limited. I'd also point out that while $1 billion sounds like a lot of money, it's actually equivalent to about 13 teachers. So it doesn't actually provide an answer for any questions about how do we fill budget shortfalls. It would be a best a temporary one-time stopgap. And then finally, of course, there is the instructions from Dr. Bennett who basically said, don't spend it, hang on to it, and wait to see if the legislature takes it away from you.
Stimulus money?
Well, look, I will say one thing about stimulus money. We know we're getting it. We know the amount. It's $1,038,000. The point that the administration is making about waiting to see if the state offsets it and says, okay, we know that the federal government earmarked that to you and we're going to cut what we were going to give you. Again, remember, their cuts, funding cuts that they know about are already projected in 2011. That the state could say, yeah, we're going to cut it even more by $1 million. But this reference to other states, first of all, I like to think that in Indiana, Mitch Daniels claims that our state has done a really good job being conservative and watching our pennies, and I think we're in a good position. And so, you know, honestly, I don't really think that we have to look at other states about what Indiana's doing. Mitch Daniels said publicly on August 12th that he foresees no further funding cuts to the education in Indiana for 2011.
All right, well, I think we will leave it there for the question and answer period. Let's take